here, just doing another race creation tutorial. This time we're going to be doing the Planet Brokers gameplay affinity. A week or two ago, Amplitude dropped their new patch, which nerfed basically your trait selections for your custom factions. It was an extremely needed patch. Basically what you could do beforehand was just take a whole heap of negatives that didn't affect your race whatsoever and overpower them with a whole heap of positive traits. Now we're limited to a maximum of 8 traits for the race, which I found is a nice balance. It allows you to do a lot of different things while not confining you too much, but making sure you're not going to be overpowered against the AIs and the base races if you're playing against them. So for our visual affinity to go with Planet Brokers, we're actually going to play the Lumeris, the appropriate visual affinity. The reason we're going to play them is they have the strongest dust heroes in the game. Because we're going to be playing Planet Brokers, our gold or our dust generation is going to be the most important thing that we need. So taking the heroes that are strong for that are a no-brainer. For our home planet type, we're going to take Atoll. It's the strongest 10-point planet for dust production. It also gives an extremely good food production. So we're going to be able to grow our race and expand. For our government type, we're going to take Federation. It is by far the strongest government type you can take. It allows you to have multiple extra planets depending on the game's map size before your people start getting unhappy. So the more you colonize, the more support you have in the late game for fighting. You've got more production sectors. It's extremely powerful to have more systems without having to worry about taking the negative of unhappiness. For our political leaning, we're going to take industrialists. Now, this basically means that we're going to be generating dust when we create a building. When we do any of our productions, we're going to actually generate a dust amount with the base starting law. So it compresses with Planet Brokers. Generally, I would normally take ecologists with the race purely because it smoothes out a lot of the start. It allows you to colonize different planets that, you know, you might not otherwise be able to colonize, so you don't run into the problem of, okay, I've scanned sector after sector after sector, but haven't found actually anywhere to land my ships for colonies, or in this case, buy colonies. But Industrialist is a lot stronger for these guys, purely because they need the dust to get there. If they don't have the dust to colonize a planet, then, you know, you can't build a colony ship or anything like that. You can't supplement it. So we need to have our dust first and foremost before anything else. We can get the tech if we need it to make sure that we're colonizing those things. For our secondary, we're going to take merchants. We're going to be doing a lot of industry-based stuff in the early game because we're going to be building a lot of stuff. So later on, we want our pacifists to come into power. This will allow us to make a lot of alliances with people, that sort of thing, and basically buff our generation through the roof. For our bonuses, we're going to take Adapt Workers. It's extremely strong, +5 to our science, dust, and production per population. It's going to ensure that we can get the tech that we need, we can produce the buildings that we need, and we're getting plenty of dust to be able to colonize everything that we need to. Now, there's no food in here, so we're actually going to shore that up with our next trait. Right, we're going to take Prolific Farmers. It gives us a +3 on Fertile. Atoll planets are always starting as a fertile planet, so we guarantee to have that on at least our start planet. A lot of the early planets that you can colonize are going to be fertile, so it's going to help us with that lack of food generation on our population in the early to mid game before we get onto those larger planets that don't have as much food and generally aren't fertile. For our 20 and 50 population, we're going to be taking Mercantile Collective. Once again, we need to generate as much dust as possible. This is going to give us the option of either buying out fleets if you want to play a combat type race, or accelerating your growth to go for an economic victory. But that's primarily going to be our win con. We're going to look for economic victories. The way we do this is through a whole heap of trade companies and that sort of thing. Now, moving on to our traits, we're going to take Apathetic Colonists. Because we're playing a race that doesn't need to send ships to where we need to colonize, we can hop, skip, jump across the universe as we see fit. Now, the reason we take apathetic colonists with this is when you colonize a planet, it gets support from an existing planet that's already a proper colony. It sends it a ship of food that is extremely slow. A lot of the times, your ship won't make it to the planet that you've colonized before it grows into a colony. Alright, so apathetic colonists allows us to keep some of that food that would probably go to waste, or at least most of the time go to waste, and keep it on our actual own planet, still working for us, still growing our population. Now, we're going to take businessmen too. 20% extra dust, it helps us, obviously, with our focus on dust. It's a must-have. It's going to make sure we can do all of those things that I said before. Buy our ships, make sure we keep colonizing, buy out different system upgrades, those sort of things. Combat rookies is basically my base negative that I take. Manpower is not an issue if you're earning enough of it. If you're expanding well and you're making allies with the neutral factions, manpower is never going to be an issue for you. Crowded planets is exceptionally important to the Lumeris, especially when you're going for a trade victory. This allows you to have extra 2 population per planet. It's going to raise the trade value of your system because it's going to be producing more dust, more industry, more science, so on. Alright? So the more population you can cram into a sector, the higher its production is going to be, the higher its trade value is going to be overall. We're going to take Growth Plan 1. This is going to help us grow in the early game. It's not that big of a buff. You could take something else that, say for instance, buffed your trade, like you might take, alright, Kingpin Executives to make them level up a little bit faster for your trade companies, because in the end, your trade companies are going to be your primary income. But I've found Growth Plan helps you anyway, a little bit more. It's just a gameplay preference, really. So maybe test it out for yourself, see what you prefer. I prefer Growth Plan purely because it helps me get to the point where I'm able to put down my colonies faster because of the extra food. Now, I have taken Skillful Traders. It gives us 20% extra SAR system trade value on the systems. So we're going to look to try and increase those as much, same way we did with Crowded Planets. It's the primary win con, so any way we can ramp that up is exceptionally good. Generally, in a normal speed game, you should be looking to win around turn 90 to 105 with an economic victory with these guys. That comes down to a lot of your own skill and planning with your trade companies. But that's getting a little bit ahead of myself anyway. So we're going to take Strange but Good, right? That's going to make sure that we have a good start to the game. Our first planet's going to help us basically accelerate out. Now, I have taken Wary Travelers on these guys, right? It is a penalty to us that's going to slow our movement down a little bit. That's not that much of a big deal for us. Because we're playing the Lumeris Visual Affinity, we don't have colony ships, so we actually start with 2 scouting ships, which means we're going to have at least 4 probes at the beginning of the game. So a lot of our exploration is going to come from firing those probes off to explore the universe for us. We don't have to worry about colony ships' travel time because of Wary Travelers, and once we get into the mid-game, we can accelerate ourselves with modules and stuff like that on our support ships for our combat fleets. So Wary Travelers for these guys is a lot less negative purely because we don't have to fly colony ships anywhere. So it doesn't hurt us that much. We can use our probes to explore, just be smart, you know. A lot of small little tricks that I'll get into with the gameplay video later on. The next week or so I'll be putting up a gameplay that'll have a whole heap of tips and tricks that basically work with this race, and just some general gameplay improvement. Just little things that you can do to make sure that you're playing the game as efficiently as possible. Try and help you get to the higher difficulties if you're having issues. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed the race creation tutorial for the Planet Brokers. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoy the videos. You guys can also catch me on Twitch at Manic A Panda. So I do a lot of live gameplay and that sort of thing on there, and a lot of multiplayer stuff. if you guys are looking to try and catch any more interactive stuff, and I'm happy to answer questions, that sort of thing. So leave them in the comments below, or if you catch me on stream, feel free to ask me.